So now a question that's been hopping around some of the chat feedback. You guys have all touched about it in different ways, but whether it's AI, tech more broadly, someday soon we'll have quantum computing that will be another linchpin or change agent. Is the role of the board changing? We talked about how some of the players are changing and the skill sets that are bringing into the board, but is there a fundamental shift in the way boards are governing in this age of AI? I'll let anybody answer that because I think this one kind of pops in every one of your expertises.
I mean, I'll take a crack. I mean, to some degree, I think the board, more than anybody at a company, needs to have the longest term perspective. They can't just be focused on the short term. So the board should be focused on emerging issues, emerging threats. Quantum is something that most boards should already have been discussing because of the dangers it presents in terms of security and et cetera. I do think, boards have probably become more deeply engaged with companies in the last 10 years or so. I think in part because of the numerous crises and because the number of issues they're facing continues to multiply. But there still needs to be a line between the board and management for management to be able to function effectively. And part of the dialogue, I think, is about where that line is. I mean, to have a successful board CEO relationship, you need to have agreed rules of the road, except in the event of an emergency where the board may need to dive in more deeply.
Anybody want to add anything to that?
The piece that I'd add is historically the accumulated experience and expertise of the board and knowledge of the board has been a tremendous asset to the organization, and it still will be. But increasingly, knowledge is being commoditized. And so the judgment, wisdom, and adaptability and agility of the board is increasingly important versus where we've seen in the past.
I'll say a couple of things. You framed it in the context of AI. I think what is happening with AI is not just the AI itself and how people use it, but you look at how several companies are responding to those and you say, oh, maybe I could do that too. So for example, Block goes through and does a massive layoff, right? And you say, a board sits there and says, should we also examine our human capital? Maybe we've got too many people and we don't need as many people now in this new world of AI. Well, honestly, they may not have needed them anyways. Right? And they just never got around to doing it because the board has too many things on their plate. Or maybe they don't have enough, or maybe they don't have the right people and they need to go out and hire. Similarly, you look at, I mentioned reverse acqui-hires before, but poaching talent is real. And it is very important in this kind of new paradigm of what is it that's driving value in companies these days? Because here's a question. If I'm representing a competitor of yours, do I need to buy your entire company, or can I go after key employees and just get them because, they're all located in California and they're not allowed to sign up the traditional types of non-competes and invention assignment and other things that you might have in companies that are based elsewhere. But companies are realizing that because we're in an environment where the federal government and state regulators are much more open to transformative transactions and events, the companies themselves can make moves in the next year or two or three that they probably would not have done 5 years ago. And that means that the boards have to be more involved. Your CEO comes to you and says, I want a moonshot pay package. I think I'm going to, Elon Musk got it. I should get it too. I'm key to this company. And you have never done succession planning. What do? You can't do anything. You call Heather and David and say, hey, what should we do at this point? But it's too late, right? And now that all of these AI related things, and frankly, a lot of it's just coming out of Silicon Valley, but are becoming national news, your executive team and members of your board are seeing those as opportunities and options. And if you're not paying attention and you're not seeing how can we prepare for these things and how might we respond, you're going to get caught flat-footed.
And I would just hearkening back to what Heather mentioned also about judgment and agility. If you think about it from a compensation perspective and from the changing role of proxy advisory firms, maybe a fracturing landscape in terms of what the guidelines are, what appropriate pay programs or pay governance practices are. We've already seen directors becoming more and more comfortable, being forced to be more comfortable with exercising more judgment, sometimes doing things that might be different from an established list that somebody like ISS puts out, but that makes sense for your particular management team or company, and then being comfortable crafting that story for shareholders.